Hey, today's the 14th of April, 2011. I'm here with Trenton Gaucher, president of the student organization Otto's Army. Do I have your permission to record this interview for use in my project?
Yes.
Hey, so tell me a little bit about yourself. What year are you?
I'm a fourth-year student. I'm actually a grad student, though.
Okay.
I graduated in 3 years, so I'm working on my master's right now.
Oh, what's your major?
Accounting.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Were you a fan of Syracuse teams before you attended here?
No, I'm actually from California originally, so I didn't really know much about Syracuse, short of like the 2003 basketball national championship.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about Otto's Army.
Otto's Army is our effort at a student section. It's essentially, it's along the same lines as the Oakland Zoo or the Cameron Crazies.
Mm-hmm.
It's one unified student section. We also have a student organization, which obviously I head up, with a board of 7 members. We have a congregation that meets every other week to decide how we can make that student section and home field advantage better.
Okay. How'd you get involved?
I found out about it when I was like a freshman or sophomore. I was always really dedicated to basketball. I think it's one of my favorite sports, college basketball. So we would go and we would see some of the diehards there and realize that they were getting together and they were talking about how to make the experience better. So I actually became vice president my sophomore year and then became president for my junior and my 4th year. So I originally just went to meetings every other week and we'd talk about what kind of things we could do to get students to go to non-revenue sports, some of the women's sports that are less recognized but equally as great. So it's an easy thing to get into, and it's become a passion of mine.
Yeah, I went to a women's lacrosse game like a week ago. And it was
Yeah.
surprisingly fun.
Yeah. It's really under-recognized. I mean, people don't go to women's basketball, women's lacrosse, field hockey. Our field hockey team made the Final Four like last year.
Oh, really?
Our softball team is ranked this year. Our women's ice hockey team has only been in existence for 2 or 3 years, and they were in the top 10 this year, which is just like,
yeah, that's crazy.
Unheard of. So there's a lot of good sports out there that people just aren't aware of.
Yeah. And how'd you become president? Was it like an election or?
Yeah, we have an election. We actually just had one to solidify our board for next year because 4 of the 7 members are graduating. But we have one at the end of every year. It's for 1 year and it doesn't carry over. So I had to run for president twice. But we have an election and give speeches and pick the best candidate. And we had actually a really good turnout this year for our election. So it's getting pretty competitive.
As president, what kind of things do you do?
I oversee the board for the most part. I do a lot of delegation of the vice president to have him delegate to the rest of the board. But as president, I'm more face of the organization. The vice president comes up with very good ideas, and he's been what's really driven this organization forward. But as president, I meet people, sort of schmooze, if you will, and try and get things accomplished by using good diplomatic skills, etc.
Have you always been a big sports fan?
Yeah, I was a pretty big sports fan in high school. More so when I got here. You're surrounded by more people that are into sports when you're in college, especially at a sports school. But I'm definitely a bigger fan now that I'm at Syracuse.
Do you have a group of friends you usually go to the games with?
Oh, definitely. We're really dedicated for basketball. We always try and camp out. Some years we've camped out 7 to 10 days for some of the bigger games, but it's definitely worth it. Win or lose, it's an excellent atmosphere. So we always try and stick with the same group of people, and it'll change. People go in and out, but it's usually that same core group of friends.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any game day or game time traditions?
A lot of us are really superstitious about some of the things we wear. Sometimes we'll pray, sometimes it all depends on the situation. We have a couple of different things we do. My friends think it's funny to lift me up like Jesus at the end of a game when they play Jesus Christ Superstar, but I never found that too amusing, but I don't really have too much control over it. They're a little bigger than me.
Is drinking ever involved, like before, during, or after games?
I think it's a common thing. We're an officially recognized student organization, so we don't officially encourage people to drink, but I think that's part of enjoying college sports. You don't have to be drunk to have fun, but, there's nothing wrong with pre-gaming and going to a football or basketball game. I think it's just it's part of the college experience,
I agree.
Yeah.
What's the best part about being in the student section?
The atmosphere. Every student section has their own culture to it. Obviously, some are stronger than others, and we have a pretty cool student section because of its pure size. We're one of the few, if not the only, college arena to guarantee every student a seat, which is pretty ridiculous when you think about it. If all 20,000 students wanted to come to a game, then they would get a seat, which is hard to imagine. But when we get 4,000 to 5,000 for a basketball game, and when the entire dome is full up with 34,616, like, that's a ridiculous number to put in a basketball arena. So I would say the atmosphere, the student spirit, it's really, really one of a kind.
I've seen you shouting some stuff at opposing teams' players during warm-ups at basketball games. Tell me a little bit about that.
We try and get in their heads. We generally keep it clean. We don't like to, we don't make fun of them for, their families or their tattoos, because it's a little too personal. But, it's funny when a player is of foreign descent and you can say something like, you will lose this game in Croatian or whatever they speak. That's always kind of gets in their head, and we like to do that a little bit.
That West Virginia.
Yeah, Kalichkli.
That's right.
I think is his name, and he, I think he's Croatian or something of the sort.
Yeah, that was really fun.
And we like to get in their head a little bit. Some of the players, tune it out. If you're playing basketball at Georgetown or Villanova, then you're used to being heckled all the time. But some of the players at some of the schools that aren't as successful at basketball, they'll give you some feedback. Like West Virginia actually, and Cincinnati have always been really vocal in response, which is interesting.
What's the worst thing you've ever shouted at an opponent, and don't be afraid to repeat it?
I don't know. I'm usually actually the clean type. I try and keep it clean. I think I can get in their heads without saying anything too bad. Nothing comes to mind. I would tell you if I had one, but that's usually not me with the dirty ones.
Have you heard anyone else say anything really bad?
I'm trying to think of a specific instance.
It's fine if you can't.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people say some things. There's a security guard that stands there and always, he's like, if you say something that's a little too far, he'll go, whoa, but yeah, I can't think of anything specifically, unfortunately.
Okay. How big of a fan would you say you are?
I'm a huge fan. I'm a diehard. I'm a personal believer that you don't have to be a diehard fan to really enjoy sports here, but I fell in love when I came here. One of the first things I saw out my plane window when I came here. I'm from California originally. The first thing I saw out my plane window was the Carrier Dome, and I never visited here. I never toured here. And when I got here, sports was just part of my life immediately. And even with some of the lesser success of the football team, and even my freshman year, the basketball team went to the NIT tournament. So I've gotten to see those programs build and really do some special things. And I would say, I've spent more time in the Carrier Dome than anywhere else on campus.
What would you say separates you from other fans?
I mean, I don't sit at games, even during halftime. It's just something that I do. I think as being a good student, a good fan, that standing is just part of that. It's part of your duty, and you only get to do that for 4 years. And some people would say you have to do it, but I think you get to do it, because after that you never get to be a student again. You can come to the games, but you can't stand. You can't. You could cheer like that, but you'd be obnoxious. When I come back for games, I'm going to be sitting, and right now I'm a student, and I would say that I take that student experience to the max, and I do everything that a student should do.
What's the longest you've camped out for, and what game was it?
I don't know the exact number of days. It was somewhere in the 7 to 10 range. I'm pretty sure it was 8 days for Georgetown my sophomore year, and it was long, and I spent personally 3 nights outside because it's in groups, so you don't have to spend every night out there. But I spent 3, and the first night we went out there, the wind chill was -10, and it was 0 degrees outside.
That's ridiculous.
Killer, but it was totally worth it. Totally worth it.
Does your role as president or as a fan ever conflict with your role as a student? I feel. We don't have official rules as to how a board member or president is supposed to act, but I feel it's my responsibility to lead by example. I want students to have a good time, and I want them to drink and enjoy these games, but personally I don't often drink before the games because sometimes I'll meet people at the games that I really need to be composed for. If I'm talking to the athletics director, then, it's inappropriate for me to be half naked, wearing, with the chest painted and, drunk. So sometimes, but I still enjoy myself a lot, and I act like any other student. Maybe I don't, I try and keep it clean when I yell something. I don't really join in the bullshit or asshole chants. It's just something that I refrain from because I think it looks bad for the organization.
Mm-hmm.
But that's part of the student section. Anywhere you go to Wisconsin and their sections O and P in their football stadium, they go back and forth and they go eat shit, and the other one goes fuck you back and forth. And it's just part of a student section, but it's just something I don't partake in.
What do you think is the best student section? The Cameron crazies are pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, they are. They're set up that way though. I think they are probably the quintessential student section. They also have the benefit of being on the side of the court and being able to almost touch the players. You'll notice when they beat UNC earlier this year, UNC was running out of the stadium, and even after the game, they'd humiliated them, really beaten the hell out of them. They were still with their hands right next to their heads, running into the locker room. So it gives people the impression that they never want to go back there and play again. It's like too intimidating. But we got to work up to that. It's not, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah. I mean, I love our student section, but I kind of wish we were like as close as they were. I mean, they're still like on the court.
Unfortunately, we used to be on the side.
Yeah.
Back in the day, like in the 80s and 90s, but students actually just didn't come. And unfortunately for us, those students didn't come, then they started selling those seats, which are premium money seats.
Yeah.
And now they don't want to put students back there because they'd lose a killing. Those are the best seats in the house, and unfortunately the students in the mid-late 90s kind of lost that privilege for us.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, but what are you going to do?
How far did you have Syracuse going in the NCAA tournament?
I had us winning it all. I thought we definitely underperformed against Marquette. It was a lousy 11 seed because I would have rather played the 6 seed in Cincy like UConn did.
Yeah.
But I had us going. Our zone is really hard to prepare for in the tournament, and we had a strong enough squad. Maybe we weren't as good as we thought we could have been at one point, but we had a really good squad, especially going in. All we had to do was get lucky for 6 games, and apparently we only got lucky for 1.
Yeah. What'd you do after the loss?
It's actually this is the second year in a row, obviously, that we've really had an upset. My sophomore year, we lost to Oklahoma in the Sweet 16, and that wasn't an upset because they had Blake Griffin. There was no way we were pulling that one out, and we knew that. But my junior this year, senior year, we always have a bunch of people that were watching the game right here. We were going to go to Newark, obviously, if we made the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. That was just given. But it was dead silent here. The atmosphere was terrible. It was silent. People were crying. People just stood up, left, and we didn't say anything to each other. It's just, you put a lot after camping out and going to every game and watching this team progress and getting your hopes up. It breaks your heart at the end of the season, but I can't complain. We've had two Sweet 16s in a round of 32 since I've been here. It isn't terrible. I would have loved to walk away with a national championship, but they're going to win it next year.
I guess it was the same kind of mood last year when we lost
to
Butler.
Butler.
That was a huge upset.
Yeah, I mean, until the national championship game, you didn't know that Butler was a power to be reckoned with, and last year was the same thing, because we definitely had the firepower last year. I mean, short of Arinze and Waku getting injured, having Wesley Johnson on your team is just that's an excuse to get yourself to at least the Final Four, but, it hasn't been in the cards the last couple of years.
Yeah, Butler's been pretty good at upsetting some of these big teams.
Yeah,
again
this year and last year. They have great leadership in their coach, and unfortunately Mac's going to the NBA, but Howard's been really good. Hayward was good last year. They're a solid team.
This is kind of a general question, just to wrap up the interview. But what would you say sports mean to you?
Sports mean a lot. I follow a lot of sports outside of Syracuse. Really die hard into soccer. I watch a lot of baseball. Not too big on the NBA or NFL, but I watch a lot of sports, and it's a good way to get together with friends. It's an easy way to be passionate about something. Not that it's taking the easy street, but it's fun to be passionate for a team. And part of that fun is your team losing one year and your team winning the next. And sometimes Buffalo fans will say that they're still die hard for the Bills even though they lose every year. And I'll still love Syracuse if we never make another tournament, but I love every Syracuse